Hi, I'm Jessica and welcome to my kitchen. Today we're going to be making an apricot crostata. This is something that on my recent trip to Italy, we had different variations of this every place we stayed. So I was really excited to come back home and put together a recipe for it. Let's start with the ingredients that we need to make this tart. All of the exact measurements are in the caption below, and make sure you hit that subscribe button so you never miss a recipe. I have all-purpose flour, extra virgin olive oil, vanilla extract, grappa, 2 eggs, an orange that we'll be using the zest of, salt, baking powder, superfine sugar, and of course the apricot jam. I like to start by first mixing together my wet ingredients in a measuring cup. Now I'll gather my dry ingredients. First I'm going to zest my orange and put it into the flour. To this I'll add the salt, baking powder, and superfine sugar. Now let's give that a stir to combine it. After everything is combined, I like to make a well in the center of the flour, which is where we'll pour our wet ingredients. I like this to be mostly combined before I turn it out onto my work surface. I just find that it's easier to mix it in the bowl rather than on your counter. There's still some dry pieces in there, but that's okay, we'll incorporate them. So now that this is mostly combined, I'm going to turn it out onto my counter and knead it. Use a spatula to get those last bits out. And then we'll start kneading this together. Alright, now that this dough is looking good, we're going to wrap it in plastic wrap and refrigerate it for a half an hour. It has been about a half an hour and I've removed my dough from the fridge. I put a piece of parchment down and I've lightly floured it. Not only does this prevent this from sticking to the counter, it also makes it easy to invert it into the tart pan when we're ready to do so. I'm only using half of the tart dough right now. I have the other half reserved and that will be for the top lattice crust. So what I'm going to do is just sprinkle a little more of the flour on top to prevent it from sticking to the rolling pin. And I will start rolling this out into as close of a circle as I can get it. It's helpful to rotate the dough or the parchment paper so you get it in more of a circle than, say, a rectangle. If you need to put a little bit more flour to prevent it from sticking to the rolling pin, please do so. The nice thing about this dough is because it's made with olive oil as opposed to butter, it stays moist and can sit on your counter for a few days and you're able to pick at it. What we do is we have a little piece for breakfast, a little piece for dessert, so it's a good treat that gets us through the week. Now what you can do to make sure that what you've rolled out is large enough is simply measure it against your tart pan. This looks pretty good. And now what I'm going to do is lay this on top and simply invert so that it goes right into the tart pan. Right. Now I'm going to save the parchment paper so I can do the same thing for the top of the crust. And now I'm just going to press in the edges. And there are some sides that are lower. It's easy with this dough to just kind of put it in the spot that needs it and press it in and compensate for the lower sides there. Remove those extra pieces of the dough and we can add that to our top layer if we need to, so that we can have a little bit more of the lattice crust if we feel like we're short. Now that this is complete, I'm just going to set it aside while we roll out our top crust. So the same thing here. We're going to lightly flour the parchment paper. I have my dough that was left over. It's still in plastic wrap. I'll put that on there. And I have those little pieces of the leftover crust from the bottom. All right. And flour on top again. And start rolling this out. Now this can be in a rectangle shape. It helps us cut the strips that are needed for the top a little bit better. We're going to need 8 even-sized pieces for the top, so I'll keep my eye on the thickness. You don't want it too thick, but also the width of it to make sure that we have enough for those pieces. All right. Now I'm going to cut the strips for the top, and just to make sure that they're all about the same size, I like to use something to measure it out. And this is a scalloped edge, a pasta cutter, but it works perfectly. You can use even just a knife and eyeball it. It does not have to be perfect, but I just like to make sure that the sizes are consistent. So cutting 8 of these strips. Alright, now I have all the pieces that I need for the top crust. I'm going to set this aside. I'll put it right in front here. It's not going far. And I'm going to get the bottom crust. Wipe off my workstation here. Okay. So here I have the bottom crust in the tart pan, the apricot jam, a spoon just to get the jam in there, and I like to use a flat edge spatula to just smooth it out to make sure it's an even layer. Okay, so now I can start smoothing that out. I have a little bit reserved just in case I need more. We're not looking for a super thick layer here, just making sure it is evenly spread across the bottom. Now that I have the jam in there, I'm going to grab the strips that I cut and just layer these in a lattice pattern, 4 going one direction, 4 going the other. Now I'm going to use a paring knife just to clean up the edges of the crust that's hanging over. Alright, so now what I'm going to do is press this crust into the side of the tart pan. Again, just pinching off any of the extra and pressing it into the tart pan nicely. Now this is going to go in a 350-degree oven for 30 minutes. This tart has been in the oven for 30 minutes. You can see that the edges have browned nicely and the rest of the tart is cooked through to perfection. Now let's give it a taste. To start, the crust is really beautiful. It's crumbly, but it still has all of that moisture and richness of the olive oil, and then you do get the brightness of the orange zest in there. Paired with the apricot and some acidity, it's really a treat to eat. It's no wonder all across Italy they have these tarts. I hope you enjoyed this video and try this recipe. If you do, tag me on Instagram at Rosetti and be sure to subscribe so you never miss a recipe.